now you probably have seen most of these plants in nurseries or plant shops, and they're popular for a reason. And that's because these plants are very easy to grow. And for those who are just starting out on a houseplant journey, these are definitely great starter plants or plants that you really want to kind of get your feet wet before you dive into something that might be a little bit more finicky. So the first plant I want to talk about today is the tried and true golden pothos. Now this plant is extremely popular and extremely common for a reason, and that's because the payoff for very simple care is very high. This plant can tolerate a wide variety of light ranges. It will flourish and grow faster when exposed to brighter light, but at least you know that you're not going to kill it instantly if you stick it in that corner of the room. Typically, whenever the plant needs watering, you'll start to notice the leaves to droop or wilt, so it gives you a great clue to know when it's time to water. Now, the second plant I'm going to feature today is another very well-known plant, and that is the snake plant. The snake plant can tolerate very low light conditions, and just like with all the other plants that I'm about to mention, although it can tolerate low light, it will flourish and do much better in a brighter light. But if you want a plant that's not going to die, this is definitely the one that's for you. Now these do have a more delicate root system, so it is highly suggested that this plant goes for someone who tends to underwater. If you forget to water your plant, this one's for you. This can handle being fairly dry in between waterings, and in fact doesn't like to be constantly watered. The roots do rot over time if it's exposed to excessive watering, moist soil, or water sitting at the bottom of your pot. Now these can grow to be fairly large, but it does take an amount of time for that to happen. So if you want something also a little bit more compact and with maybe a little bit more of a shape and design, this is the one for you. Now the third plant I'm going to feature is quite tough by nature, and that is the ZZ plant. The ZZ plant can handle, just like the other two, a wide variety of light conditions. It actually prefers to be in a bright light, but it can handle fairly low light. Now the ZZ plant is also another fairly easy plant to grow. It does not like to be overwatered and can handle quite a bit of neglect. Now you don't want to completely forget to water it. It does require some watering, but it's also very forgiving if it's not being shown a little love quite so frequently. It is a slow grower, so I would not recommend this for somebody who is expecting a huge payoff, but if you're patient and you just want something with a little bit of interest and you don't want to have to pay it a lot of attention, this is the one. Now relative to the pothos is the Scindapsus. So its care is pretty similar to how the pothos is. It can handle medium-low light, although it would probably flourish in a bright light. It will show you it needs water when the leaves start to curl, so there's no guesswork in wondering when this needs to get a little bit of attention. Now there's a variety of Scindapsus out there, and I would say that for the most part, ones you would find common in nurseries would be fairly easy to grow. There are a few species that are a little bit more delicate and more difficult, but you probably would be on the search for those since they're not that common. But they're beautiful. They have these gorgeous silver variegations and designs on the leaves. This one is a Silverian, and you'll notice a lot of the silver runs along the edge of the leaf with some speckling in, and it's just gorgeous. And if you want an easy plant that you don't have a lot of maintenance on, this is probably a choice for you. Now, keeping in theme with the vining plants, the next one I'm going to show you is heart-shaped philodendron. Now there are tons of philodendrons out there, and the aroid market is just absolutely insane. But if you're starting off with some of your first plants and you don't want to spend a lot of money, something that's fairly common and easy to get your hands on is this little guy. Now these do have heart-shaped leaves, they do vine out, and they're fairly easy to propagate and grow. As far as lighting concerns, depending on the variety you get, the generic green one that you might find can handle a wide variety of light conditions. Watering is fairly easy as well, as it also shows curling in the leaves when it starts to dry out. It doesn't like to be watered too much because over time, too much moisture in the soil will also rot the leaves. But this one also has a lot of payoff because you get these long, pretty vines and you don't really have to do too much to it. You can set it on the shelf, water it every so often, and you get this. Now there's a lot of debate as to the popularity of syngoniums. And because there are so many varieties, syngoniums can vary as far as difficulty. This one in particular is called a Mary Maria. It's fairly easy because of its color. Typically green-leafed varieties will be much easier to grow because of the amount of chlorophyll in the leaves. So the greener leaves or the darker colors can handle much lower light conditions. Now these also will give you very big clues as to when it needs to be watered. The leaves will droop and wilt. You'll see them kind of slump over like this. They can take a beating. So if you don't water it over a period of time and you water it, it will perk right back up. But these guys also over time, as they grow out, will start to vine off and they can make potentially really great hanging plants. Now the Aeschynanthus is another fairly easy plant. And I didn't want to pull down my mother plant, so I decided to bring my little clipping of variegated leaves that I have here. Now these are also a vining or a trailing plant. You'll notice in a lot of hanging baskets, the stems will grow out and kind of flow out the sides. And they do produce these really adorable little flowers, which gives its name the lipstick plant because they look like little lipstick tubes. Now to me, these have been fairly easy. I would preface that with the fact that they do like a lot of bright light. So if you have a nice large window in your room or you get some sun that comes in, they do prefer to be in brighter light. These can be generously watered, do need to drain. You don't want them to be sitting in the water. So a lot of you might think that Hoyas sound very intimidating, and I've actually found Hoyas to be pretty easy. This one is my Hoya australis. Although it is a thinner leafed variety, it is fairly common because they're very easy to propagate and very easy to grow. Medium to bright light would be ideal for him. The thinner leafed Hoyas do like to be watered a little bit more frequently because obviously they're less succulent than a thicker leafed variety. So you do want to make sure that you're letting the soil dry out but giving it a drink of water without letting too much time go by. But as far as care is concerned, there's very minimal maintenance. You can let this guy grow and you get these long tendrils that get tangled in your hair that grow all over the place and give you this reward of vines and potentially some of the most beautiful flowers. I also have a few of the Hoyas hanging behind me, and I've had these here for probably a year, and I just let them go and just give them a little bit of water every so often, and they've been doing fine. Another plant I want to introduce is in the Peperomia family, and that's the Peperomia caperata. Now Peperomia tend to be very compact plants and they don't like bright light. A medium light is ideal. So these plants can really handle a less than ideal situation. And most Peperomia varieties are fairly thick leaved and succulent, so it gives you very strong clues as to when it needs to be watered. I notice with all my peperomias when they're thirsty, the leaves start to curl or droop or get extremely soft. So once I give them a good drink of water, you'll notice the leaves get nice and stiff and they seem to perk up and be nice and happy. Now last but not least, and I'm also not gonna look that big guy over here, is the Monstera deliciosa. Now over the past couple years, this plant's popularity has just exploded. It's beautiful for its large leaves, its fenestrations, and its very tropical feel. Now this plant can get quite large, so although the care for it is very easy, you definitely want to keep in mind that this plant can take over a space if you don't keep it trimmed and maintained. The lighting requirements for the Monstera are also fairly easy. They do like bright light, but they can tolerate less than ideal light situations. Now I will find that the lower light you put it in, the longer the stems on the leaves will be because it's starting to search for the light. So if you put it next to a window or you put it next to a very strong light source, over time you might find that the leaves shift and move towards that light. Ideally then you would want to put that plant in a very bright room so that it's not having all these stretched out leaves. And just like most plants, you want to water occasionally, and I would take into consideration the size of the pot, since more soil means more moisture. It retains a lot longer than a smaller pot would. I hope this helped you at least a little bit when picking your first plant. At least this will give you a good start into your plant journey, and you can have an idea which direction to go so you're not feeling quite so overwhelmed by all the plants in the stores. Hi, let me know what other types of content you'd like to see from me, and what plants work for you. I'd really like to know what you guys are growing and what's easy. But feel free to hit like and subscribe and do all the fun YouTube stuff, because that helps us content creators as much as possible. And I appreciate all of the support that you guys have given so far. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!